you for tuning in to the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. WDRB Media and WGIV, the soul of Charlotte. This is Marriage Matters, and I'm your host, the Marriage Coach. Make sure you tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 for tips and advice on all matters of marriage. Be sure to like us on Facebook by searching for Marriage Matters so that you can stay abreast of topics, ask questions, or comment during our interactive segment of Marriage Matters. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.ittakes2marriagecoaching.com for more information on our services. Our show sponsor for this show is It Takes Two Marriage Coaching. It Takes Two provides individual marriage coaching and group marriage retreats to couples who are looking to strengthen their marriage. Today we have a guest in the studio with us, and I am so excited to have her back for a second time. She was with us last week. We were having some girl talk, and I've got Miss Delisha in the studio with me today. What's up, Delisha?
Hey, what's up?
I am so glad that you are back in and you agreed to come back in and have some girl talk with me today. Tell our listeners, because everybody that was listening last week might not be listening to this week and vice versa. Tell our listeners a little bit about who you are.
Okay, again, my name is Delisha, and I am married. Been married for 6 years. Been with my spouse for 9 years. I have one biological son who's 21, and I have 4 stepchildren. My youngest stepson will be 21 in February, and he actually was raised in our household since the age of 7.
Cool. So you bring in a wealth of knowledge and experience to our Girl Talk conversation. So listeners, if you're tuning in today, we're so glad to have you. We are going to be giving you an eye into the world of Girl Talk. So it is like, although we're sitting in the studio right now, we are pretending that we are sitting on a comfy couch with 2 glasses of wine, and we are just going to be talking about everything that women talk about when no one else is around. Last week, we kind of scratched the surface. We did like generic, safe conversations. This week, we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to start talking a little bit more about our marriages. We're going to kind of talk about some sex and intimacy, the things that we talk about as women, because we've grown and we married and we can do that. And so we're going to be sharing this with you today and actually letting you hear the perspective of women. All right, so when we come back, we're going to continue on with some Girl Talk with Marriage Matters. I'm your host, the Marriage Coach, and you're tuned in to WDRB Media and WGIV, the soul of Charlotte. Husbands, if you could turn back the hands of time, would you propose to your wife again? Wives, if you could go back to that very day, would you still say yes? Have you lost that I still do commitment, or do you need a refresher on how to keep that I still do commitment in your marriage? What better time to recommit to your spouse, rekindle the love, and remember why you fell in love than Valentine's weekend? Join us for our next I Still Do marriage retreat for Valentine's weekend in Georgia. Join us for fun and engaging activities to strengthen every marriage at every stage. Reserve your spot today, as we only take 10 couples at a time. This marriage retreat will sell out. Contact us at 704-449-6542 or contact us via our website at www.ittakes2marriagecoaching.com for more information on our next marriage retreat. Welcome back to WDRB Media and WGIV, the soul of Charlotte, and those streaming live through the free TuneIn Radio app. You're listening to Marriage Matters, and I'm your host, the Marriage Coach. If you're just tuning in, we're just having some juicy girl talk today. We're going to be giving the world a view of what it's like in the conversations of women when no one else is usually around. We're going to be talking about marriage and being mommies and our husbands and our careers and even sex. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And make sure you tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 for tips and advice on all matters of marriage. Be sure to like us on Facebook by searching for Marriage Matters -WGIV so that you can stay abreast of topics, ask questions, or comment during our interactive segment of Marriage Matters. Also, be sure to check out our website at www.ittakes2marriagecoaching for more information on our services. Now, let me also, remind you guys and let you know that periodically throughout today's show, we're going to be doing marriage shout outs, and couples are going to have the opportunity to call in and shout out their marriage and tell us why marriage matters and why it's important to them. We're also going to be using our social media outlets to communicate and engage with you all, our listeners. So you can also send us your marriage shout outs via Facebook as well as email. Now, Delisha, when you were here with us last week, we were finishing up our conversation around things that women say that men interpret one way, but we really mean it another way. And so that was really fun, and it was really cool to do, and I think that a lot of women and men could relate. So I thought we should maybe finish up our list before we dig deeper into some other conversations. So I think the very last one we did last week was when a woman says, we need to talk, what does she really mean? And we were having conversations about how men hear that phrase and they immediately think, I have done something wrong. I have pissed off my wife. She's not happy with me. This is going to turn into a potential argument. They almost look at it all from a negative perspective. And we were kind of sharing in the studio that it's not always negative. I know you did say sometimes it is like, yep, we're going to have a conversation because some stuff has popped off. And then other times it's like, no, we just need to process some stuff that's going on in our marriage. I don't want to argue. You're not in trouble. It's just some stuff that's got to be talked about. I know when you say you're not in trouble.
You're not in trouble.
Gosh.
We've got to stop that. That's like talking down to your spouse.
It is. And even when I said it, it's like you're talking to a child.
Yeah.
And not to a man. So women.
Because we say the same things to our kids.
Yep.
We need to talk. Come on in here.
Yep. Come on.
But
in the
for
room.
that when we say that, generally that means, yeah, you did something, or you're doing something. You're not doing something that I want you to do. So I think we should.
Well, let me ask this question real quick, and this is not on my list, but I'm just curious. Has your husband ever said to you, "We need to talk"?
No.
Because I don't think mine has either.
I think men avoid having to talk at all times. I think that men are okay. I think they just kind of let things go. Is as long as everything is going smoothly, there's no big, nothing big that's happened in the marriage, they're okay with it. It's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. Let's just move on. Let's not dwell on it. And so I don't think men want to open up that can of worms, because even if it's them that says we need to talk, I got a whole lot to say if we need to talk. So let's let you get your piece, but then we gonna talk.
Gonna really talk.
Yeah, we gonna talk. So.
All right, so maybe if there's any husbands listening that disagree, you all can give us a call in or maybe send us an email or an inbox and let us know if we're wrong about that. Do men actually say we need to talk? Because neither of us have ever heard our husbands say it. Just curious if any men out there ever say that to your wife. All right, so this, have you ever had a conversation with your spouse where he's asking, babe, Delisha, what's wrong? And, he's obviously asking you that because he's getting a certain vibe from you. Maybe it's your body language. Maybe it's your tone. I don't know. But he feels like maybe something is wrong, and that's why he's asking you. And you have that time where your response is nothing. And it's like that, too. Not like, oh, no, nothing, baby. Nothing's wrong. It's nothing.
And for me, that usually means absolutely something is wrong. I just don't want to talk about it right now. And usually for me it's more emotional. Like it's not that I'm usually angry at him. It's something that's just really going on with me emotionally, and I'm not ready to discuss it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. And I know for me, I'm always like, obviously you asked me is something wrong because you can tell something's wrong. So I'm almost like offended when he asked me that, because I'm like, duh. Obviously you're reading my body language, or, I've said something that makes you think something is wrong. And I would prefer the question to be, babe, you seem like something is bothering you. What's wrong? What is wrong? Versus, versus, well, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying, but versus versus like what's wrong, like you're wondering, am I going to give you an answer of whether or not something is wrong or not. I want you just to ask what it is so that you're more asking about a specific of what's wrong, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
I didn't catch that, but I
So instead of you're asking what's wrong as in I need a yes or a no, you're asking what's wrong as in, is it, did you have a bad day at work? Are the kids getting on your nerves? Is everything, are all our bills paid? Like, is anything bothering you in terms of a specific thing?
That's almost a guessing game. Like, why does he have to go through all of those?
No, he doesn't have to. I want him to ask me in a way that is almost like he's already assuming that something is wrong, because that's why he's asking me, and he's allowing me the opportunity to open up about what it is.
Okay, well, like I said, for me, mine is usually more emotional. It's more, it's because really, if I got something on my mind, like I spoke earlier, I think we talked about that last week, I'm going to say what's on my mind. So it's not going to be what's wrong because I know something's wrong and you won't tell me. You going to know what's wrong. So if I say nothing like that, then it's because, I'm really going through something emotionally and I'm just not ready to deal with it and talk about it at that moment.
Right. Do you think it's fair for you to say, yes, there are some things going on, but I'm just not prepared to talk about them?
Yes, absolutely.
Versus the nothing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. And actually,
I
think it's better that would be better probably to say, yes, but I don't want to talk about it right now.
Right.
Opposed to just saying nothing. But no, I don't. That? I don't.
Okay. All right. And that's what we got to work on.
And I won't even say nothing. Usually I just shake my head. Like, I just shake my head to mean nothing opposed to really saying it. Just because if I say that, I'm generally on the verge of tears. So I don't want to talk about it. Just don't want to talk about it.
Okay. All right. So our last little part of this game. So how about this word here? How about in the middle of a heated conversation? I'm not going to say that it's necessarily an argument, but in the middle of a heated conversation, a woman throws out, "Wow." For a lot of men, they don't know really what that means. Not necessarily good or bad. They just really don't have any idea of where that wow came out in the middle of this conversation. What are we really meaning? Or what are you really meaning? If you've ever used that word in the middle of a heated discussion with your husband and you just like, wow.
Usually, for me, if I say wow, like it's like, really, that's your comprehension of what all of this is about, opposed to what I think it's about. You have a totally different view or opinion of what we're talking about. You didn't respond the way I think you should have responded. And I'm just like, wow, really? Like all of this, and that's what you got from that? And then to me, it's like pointless, because if you didn't get it after all that conversation, and I done got to the point of saying, wow, I'm through talking, because you obviously ain't going to get what it is I'm trying to say. I'm just done.
So you done shut down at that point.
I done shut down and conversation's over. Just forget it.
And I'm in agreement. So that's typically what it means for me too. I'm usually like just almost in awe that we're at this part of the conversation and we've been having this conversation, let's say 30 minutes to an hour, maybe longer. And that's the comment. Like, yeah, we had all this conversation for you to say that? Wow.
Wow. And I'll say that, I'll be like, wow, really, dude? Oh, okay. I'm done.
Yeah. So hopefully this little list that we started last week and we're just kind of rounding up this week helps our husbands out there, and as well as some of our wives to kind of process, there are definitely going to be times where we are communicating on two different languages. Like, it's almost going to be like your wife speaking French and you speaking Spanish, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we interpret what each other is saying here? Because I don't speak French, you don't speak Spanish, so how are we going to figure this out?
Right.
And so just be mindful. I mean, we laughed about a lot of these last weekend, this week, because, you know, I think a lot of times to us it's funny because we know that in general, men can't interpret what in the world we're actually saying, but we think it's kind of cute and it's kind of funny. But in all actuality, sometimes your husband might be giggling at it with you, and then other times it might really be a point of stress and you know, an issue in your marriage where your husband's really upset and he's really tired of having to figure you out,
Right.
and having to listen to all the riddles
Right.
to figure out what in the world you're actually saying. So wives, if you fit in this box, let's work on it. And I say let's because I'm guilty. Obviously, we've had this conversation. I'm guilty with you. So we got to do a better job. All right. So I think this is going to be a good place to stop and do a marriage shout out. We're going to read one right off of our Facebook page. And this one is coming from LaWanda Oxendine. She says, shout out to my marriage, 10 years and more to come. My husband is truly my better half. We've been through so much turmoil, but with faith, trust in God, we have overcame. Till death do us part, sickness and in health, and through the good and bad, love conquered all. I would not trade our marriage for anything in the world. United we stand, divided we fall. And I can't thank God enough for blessing me with an imperfect, humbled man. That right there was beautiful. So, Mr., if you're listening out there, Mr. Oxendine, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correct, Lawanda. If you're listening out there, those are just wonderful words from your wife to you. If you would like to have your marriage shout out heard on our show, make sure that you send us one via Facebook or via email, or feel free to call into the show. And we're going to be doing a few more marriage shout outs before we actually close out today on the show. But I just wanted to definitely stop and do a marriage shout out real quick. All right, Delisha. So let's roll back into our conversations.
Okay.
So we've had conversations about the miscommunication between husbands and wives and how it all, you know, how that all happens, and kind of gave the world some insights into what women are thinking when we make certain comments or we do certain things. So as women, kind of shifting gears a little bit here. As women, I know, at least for me, I was raised in a two-parent household for several years, and then later on, in the later years of my adolescence, my parents divorced, and I was raised by a single mom at that point. And my dad was still involved in my life, but he was not in my life every single day. He didn't live with us every day. And so, you know, I was raised watching my mom be this strong, independent woman working full time. I can remember the times that she was in school, she was in college, and working full time, and raising me and my sister. And so I just, you know, I remember watching her make things happen, and watching her just be strong and courageous and passionate and beautiful in everything that she did. And I think oftentimes, you know, in this life, in society, we are raised to sort of adorn women like that, and women that have it all together, and women that are independent and can hold it all together for their families. Meanwhile, and there's nothing wrong with that, but meanwhile, when we kind of think about marriage, the role of a wife is, I'm not going to say total opposite of the independent woman, but it has a lot of differences. And we understand that sometimes being that independent woman in a marriage, I'm not even going to say sometimes, I'm going to say most of the time, having an independent woman mentality in a marriage can cause your marriage to go wrong real quick.
I agree.
So what do you think about this notion of, I'm an independent woman, I don't need a man for anything, I got a job, I got my own place, I got my own car, I can pay all my own bills, I can even raise my own children, I don't need a man for anything. What do you think about that?
I think that, and I agree that we're raised, a lot of women are raised that way. And then because you are, you know, and I was, and being a single parent, you know, so I raised my son as a single parent, and because I was used to doing everything on my own. And, you know, I went to college, I got a degree, and so, you know, I pay my own bills, you know, I bought me a house, you know, as a single mother. I, you know, bought cars, whatever car I wanted or whatever, and can do this. And then when I got married, though, I think what men and I actually, honestly, can I say this? I got this from Steve Harvey. I think honestly says it best when he says that men just want to know that they're needed, and there's three things about men that they want to do. They want to protect, provide, and there's three things: protect and provide, and then there's something else. But I think men need to know, and they want to do that. And I think as women, we need to allow them to do that, because honestly, it's just the same way we say, what do we need a man for? I think men can flip it and say, if they got a woman that can do all of this, then what do you need me for? What am I here for? What can I give you that you can't do for yourself?
Right.
So I think that's for me, it's a work in progress still. I mean, it's still hard to just let go, because again, I think we spoke about it. I don't know if it was early today or last week, but we spoke about, saying that if I wanted something done and you don't do it then I'm just going to go ahead and do it. And I think it's just because we've been used to doing that. So I haven't had to ask anybody in the past. So if you don't do it, I'm just going to do it, and that's fine. But I think as women, we need to allow men a little more, we need to allow them to do more and to step up more. And I don't want to say to stroke nobody's ego, so to say, but so that they know that they're needed and that they're wanted. Because I think if the shoe was on the other foot and we didn't feel needed or wanted, we would have a problem with it. So I think we need to give that same respect or whatever to men.
That's good. And you actually said something that kind of made me think about something. At our last, as you all know, we do marriage retreats, and we host 3 a year. We do a Valentine's retreat, we do a summer marriage retreat, and then we do a fall marriage retreat. And in our last marriage retreat that just took place in Gatlinburg in October, one of the conversations that we were having, we were broke up into gender roles, and we had our husbands on one side of the room and our wives on the other side of the room. We were just kind of talking about the perspective of wives and the perspective of husbands. And one of the things that came up was a lot of our men don't feel like they have the opportunity to be a man in their marriage. And for our, there was some wives that said, well, if we allow you to do certain things and you fail, then you mess it up for both of us. So maybe it was a financial decision or something, and you were allowing him to make that decision, and he failed at that decision, or it went awry, it messed up your finances. Then it falls back on the two of you. So, I think oftentimes we have to get to a place where we are willing to say, if we fail, we're going to fail together.
Right.
And so I'm okay with letting go of my independence and depending on you, because I know in depending on you means that we're going to grow together, we're going to fail together, we're going to have hang-ups together, we're going to have successes together, but we're going to do it all together. And it, it allows us to truly learn how to depend on one another, really. And so I hate that we're running out of time here. And so... All right, I hate that we're running out of time, so we're going to have to move on from that, because I want to hit up one other topic before we end out, Delisha, but that's great conversation. And if you're listening out there and you still have this independent woman mentality and you're married, the time now is to learn how to get rid of that and know that it's not a weakness that you're actually getting rid of your independent woman status, but it's a strength that you have the ability to be humble, because it really requires you to kind of humble yourself and to lean on your spouse. And then it's awesome that you have a spouse that you can actually lean on. So, but we'll wrap up with that. We'll have to talk about that at a later date. All right, so Delisha, I want to talk about one more thing before we got to end the show. And really, this could be like a whole segment, and we might do this soon too. But in relation to sex, okay, so I had some hang-ups when I first got married, because I grew up in a very not just spiritual background, but I grew up with a very religious spiritual background, and to me they are two different things, with a lot of rules and a lot of do not, thou shall never not, if you ever do, you going to I grew up with all that. And so when I got married, and even though I knew that God was blessing my union, and I knew that me engaging in sex with my husband was a good thing, I still had all these hang-ups and because I had all these thou shall nots, that I was kind of afraid and hesitant to explore sex fully with my husband because of all the things I had been taught not to do while I was not married. So, just question for you, and I don't know if you experienced this at all, but do you think that the role of church and spirituality in our lives and maybe in our past prior to marriage had anything to do with your sex life now with your husband?
I would have to say probably not to the extent that you were kind of just speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
It did a little, and that was because my family was always in church, and so I've always, I've always believed in God, and I know that there are certain rules, church rules, and the church that I attended, I knew what those church rules were. So when I got married, there was some things that kind of bothered me about it, that where I questioned, is it okay for me to do this with my spouse?
Mm-hmm.
How does God look at this? But for me, it wasn't so much that; it was really more other things that affected the way I felt and about my sex life. So with my husband, so for me, I have to say it didn't play as big of a role, I think, as probably does for some other people.
Right. That's good stuff. So, because we don't even have enough time to go into it, so we definitely,
that's a whole.
Oh man, we definitely got to do another show on this. But what I just want to say, if there's any wives or husbands tuning in, and maybe you have an experience very similar to mine, I know what was really helpful for me was, and I know all of our listeners don't attend church, all of our listeners don't believe in God, but if you do, or if you have a higher power, that you try to look at the benefit of what God says or what your higher power tells you in reference to sex in your marriage versus the lack of, or versus the challenges of it. I know for me, just have constant communication with my husband about kind of what my sexual hangups were and being honest with him about it so that he didn't feel like it was him. It wasn't a him issue. It was a me issue. And sometimes we say that jokingly, oh, no, it ain't you, it's me. And we're actually joking. No, but for real, like, these were me issues that I had to work out. So continue to communicate with your spouse about all things. And I think that will really help us in fixing these sexual hangups.
And not even just sex, but just intimacy itself. And I know that we need to wrap up, but just like one example would be even listening to slow music, because some people just don't listen to music if it's not gospel. And so just having that intimate time with your spouse. So I think, you're right. This could be a whole show.
Yeah, and we're going to do that. I'm so grateful that you agreed to be in the show with me today, Delisha. Thank you for the Girl Talk.
You're welcome. I really, really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. All right, well, tune in next week on our next segment of Marriage Matters. Thank you for tuning in this evening, and make sure that you tune in every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Remember to connect with me by going to Facebook and searching for Marriage Matters, WGIV. I'm your host, the Marriage Coach, and you've been listening to Marriage Matters on WDRB Media and WGIV, the Soul of Charlotte.